Hope Channel, changing lives.
Hello, lovely viewers. Good evening and welcome back to the consulting room, coming live from the studios of Hope Channel, Ghana. Thank you for making a date with us. The consulting room comes up every Monday from 8 to 9 p.m. And we bring you all the tips on very important health topics. I'm Dr. Nai Kanko-Inen. And tonight we're going to be talking about a topic that's not very new to most of us, but it's still very important that we talk about it. It's something that's killing a lot of people, not just the old, but also the very young people. We call it the silent killer. Tonight, our topic is hypertension. Why should I be concerned? Hypertension is a systemic disease, meaning it affects almost every part of the body. So we need to know all about it. And the good news is it's modifiable, so we can do something about it. So all hope is not lost. With me to discuss this topic, I have two very special people. In the studio, I have with me Dr. Irene Obin, and she's a medical doctor at the 37 Military Hospital. Dr. Obin, you're welcome.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to be with us. And then joining us virtually all the way from Phoenix, Arizona, we have Dr. Nathaniel Ajay-Chermi. Dr. Ajay-Chermi, you're welcome.
Thank you very much for having me.
Right, thank you so much. So we'll go for a quick commercial break. When we get back, we'll get straight into the conversation. But as usual, you can send in your comments and your questions. We would love to hear from you. So please stay tuned. We'll be right back.
It all started in a small upper room with humble, fervent prayer. Threatened by the authorities and banned from preaching, the church prayed, and two men witnessed with great power and grace. And people prayed everywhere, in one accord, in repentance, with confession and humility, and the lives of people were changed. Two men started out on a missionary journey that would turn the world as they knew it upside down. And the message went out to the world beyond. Corporate prayer helped a prisoner escape. A king requested that his people fast and pray, and the enemy was defeated. A battle won without the need to fight. Through a faithful servant and a young queen's faith and courage, a people were saved. Stories in the Bible showing the power of united prayer.
Do you know that over 23 million doses of the COVID-19 vaccine have been administered? Do you also know that 9.9 million of the eligible Ghanaian population are fully vaccinated, and 12.9 million eligible populations have taken just a single dose?
This means that over 6 million eligible Ghanaians are yet to take any vaccination. I want to encourage all who have taken the first dose to go for the second dose to be fully vaccinated. We are informed of the possibility of the emergence of new COVID-19 variant. I therefore encourage those who are fully vaccinated to go for a booster. Let's stay protected. Together, we can keep COVID-19 at bay.
This educational video is proudly brought to you by the Adventist Development and Relief Agency, Ghana, and Hope Channel, Ghana.
Hello and welcome back to the consulting room. Our topic again for today is hypertension. Why should I be concerned? And with me, I have again two very special people. Dr. Irene Obing, who is a medical doctor at the 37 Military. What at all is hypertension and why do we need to know so much about it?
Yeah, very good question. Hypertension simply is high blood pressure. That's how we all come to know what hypertension is. But we have various definitions and various numbers that we put across to help us understand what we are dealing with.
Okay.
But basically, the heart is a pump, and as it pumps blood through vessels, the main vessel that it pumps blood through to our bodies are called arteries.
Okay.
And pumps and relaxes. And so whenever it's pumping, the force at which it pumps through the arteries is measured. And how we measure it tells us whether you have high blood pressure or not. And so the top number is when the pump is very active and is pumping forcefully. Okay. And the bottom number is when the pump is relaxing, so it's not pumping. So you have a top number, they will tell you 120 over 80 or 170 over 100 or something like that. So high blood pressure just essentially means that your blood pressure is higher than the normal. And the normal is average across societies. So the Americans will have a different kind of normal, and the Europeans and Ghanaians will have kind of a different normal. But in general, when your blood pressure is anywhere above 140, everybody agrees that it is high blood pressure.
Okay. So 140, when else should I be concerned if my blood pressure is like high? When will we say it is high, apart from it being over 140? What about the lower number?
Yes, so essentially, if it's the lower number is greater than 90, it's across the board, it's agreed that that is high blood pressure.
Okay. So can I just be diagnosed with hypertension with just, so I visited the hospital and it's over 140/90, just one reading, would I say I'm hypertensive?
No, so because we really attach a lot of importance on the number, we want to make sure that whatever we are telling you and whatever diagnosis we are giving you is accurate. So we have to measure at least multiple readings, 2 or 3 readings, and then we have to average it out and know whether you are having high blood pressure. But most of the time, when your blood pressure essentially is above like 180 and the bottom one is above 120 across 2 readings, we will just go straight ahead and diagnose you with high blood pressure, because at that point, even if it's lower than normal, it's high enough to start worrying about it.
Okay, all right, thank you. So Dr. Obing, I'll come to you. Is there something that causes this hypertension?
Yeah, so as you said, it's a silent killer. And hypertension, we have 2 types. We have the essential hypertension, and then we have the secondary hypertension. Okay. So for the essential hypertension, which is also known as the primary hypertension, and actual cause is not really known. But then there are risk factors that one can have, which will predispose you to having it. And then the secondary hypertension, there may be an underlying condition, usually a problem with your kidneys or the adrenal gland or hormone imbalances, or some form of immune disorders, and also some medications can also cause hypertension. Okay. So usually when someone presents to the clinic and then you find out that the person's BP, or when someone is diagnosed with hypertension, what we do is we let them do some investigations so that we can be sure that there's an underlying cause or there is no underlying cause and know where it falls.
Okay. So you mentioned risk factors. What are some of the risk factors?
So risk factors, usually increasing age. As we age, the body usually also, it ages too, and so it becomes weaker. It doesn't perform as much as it usually does. So increasing age is a risk factor. Also family history. If you have maybe 1 or 2 relatives in your family, your mother, your father, who has hypertension, you have an increased chance of getting hypertension. So usually people like that, you are advised to, live your life in a certain kind of way, or change your lifestyle habits in order to avoid, because you have an increased risk. Yes. Also obesity. Obesity puts extra load on the heart, and so that can also lead to hypertension. Sedentary lifestyle. There are a lot of people who hardly ever move. They are always in the house, or they are always sitting in their car to work. They sit, they go back, no form of physical activity. That can also predispose you to hypertension. Also, stress. Stress can also predispose you to hypertension. Acute stress may cause acute or short-term effects on blood pressure. But if it becomes chronic, the high blood pressure also becomes sustained. So eventually, you can develop hypertension.
Right.
And then there's also smoking and alcohol consumption and many others.
Right. Thank you so much. So Dr. Obeng specifically mentioned obesity. Dr. J. can you shed some light on that? How does that affect our blood pressure?
Very good. So obesity, simply, it's again, we use numbers to try and make it more objective assessment. And when you measure your weight as according to your height, and you can now, we have calculators, you can just Google and put those numbers in. It will tell you whether anything above 25, between 25 to 30 as the number will mean that you are overweight, and after 30 you are obese. When the higher the number is, so the higher the number away from 30, then that is you are getting yourself into multiple problems. Obesity can cause a lot of problems that we diabetes, high blood pressure, and even cancers are related to obesity. And for hypertension per se, it can cause the secondary hypertension that Dr. Bin was talking about. So it increases your risk of having something we call sleep apnea. So people who sleep and snore and they are not able to sleep very well. In that sense, just because you are obese, you have a higher risk of having sleep apnea, and then sleep apnea is one of the major secondary causes of high blood pressure. So that is there. And also just being obese, the risk factors that makes you obese, high cholesterol diet, high sodium, increased sodium diet, and all that will also predispose you to having high blood pressure. So it's kind of linked in multiple ways. And once you have a higher weight than your height is supposed to be, then you are predisposing yourself to multiple conditions. And the key one is high blood pressure, which will also make you predisposed to a lot of other dangerous illnesses.
Okay. So we've said that it's a silent killer, but are there any signs that will be picked up if someone is hypertensive, or any symptoms that I would show if I were hypertensive?
Okay. So usually when someone has hypertension, especially the essential type, they will not even realize that something is wrong with them, because usually it's idiopathic, as we put it. Like it's asymptomatic, sorry. There is no symptoms that will show that this person has hypertension. But there are people who experience some form of headaches, usually at the back of their head. There may be visual disturbances, generalized body weakness, and also if there is an underlying condition, the symptoms of those conditions may also show up. So sometimes they are diagnosed as during maybe when they were being managed for a different condition, they come across it. So sometimes the diagnosis may be incidental.
Okay. So Dr. J. mentioned that we check the blood pressure over a number of times and then we can diagnose it. What do we use to check the blood pressure, and how often should I even check my blood pressure, Dr. J.
Yes, we use a machine called sphygmometer, and it's a mouthful, so it will be a struggle. But we simply call it a blood pressure monitoring device. And there is a digital one now, and we have the very traditional one that when you go to the hospital, they use the pump and used to check you. So the best way is for you to send your digital blood pressure monitor to your clinic or your doctor and try to standardize it so that whatever reading you are measuring is kind of the same across board. And there are good ways to measure blood pressure and there are bad ways to measure blood pressure. The don'ts are that you shouldn't measure your blood pressure when you have a full bladder, when you feel like I have to pee. That will not help you. when you are measuring your blood pressure, that's not the time you should be talking. And that is not the time you should feel relaxed. Most of the time you have to sit down, wait for at least 5 minutes, relax, put your hands, kind of support your shoulder and your elbow so that it's not like your hands are hanging. And then use the appropriate cuff. So there is a cuff size for different people. Those who are obese will have a different cuff size, and those who are normal weight will also have a different cuff size. So you have to use the cuff size that's appropriate for you. And most of the cuffs, when you buy even the digital one, they will give you at least 2 different sizes. And you have to try it on and see which one fits you well. And it shouldn't be so tight as well, because the tighter it is, you are measuring your pressure against how your arteries are, or blood is flowing through your arteries. So it shouldn't be so tight such that it will give you a false reading. So that is, in a nutshell, the right ways to assess your blood pressure. How often? So there isn't a very evidence-based kind of suggestion that, you should always measure at least 2 or 4 times a day. But what most studies have recommended is that when you are diagnosed of high blood pressure, or when you are starting on a new medication or changing your blood pressure medications, at least for the first 1 to 2 weeks, you should measure your blood pressure twice a day, in the morning, in the evening. Morning, before you take any blood pressure medications, note it down, and then in the evening, you note your blood pressure readings down. And if you're able to do that consistently over that period, 1 to 2 weeks, you'll be able to have a good idea how your blood pressure is ranging, so that it will help your physicians take good care of you, know where the ranges are. The reason that it's important for us to do all these things to get a good blood pressure reading is because there is something called white coat hypertension. Some people go to the hospital or the clinic and their blood pressures, just because of the stress of being there, or the anxiety or the fear of seeing the doctor's white coat, just shoots up their blood pressures. So when you have been able to monitor your own blood pressure at home, and you send that reading to your physician, it helps us to determine whether your blood pressure is properly controlled or we need to do something more about your blood pressure.
Right. So, Dr. Ejiofor, back to you. You mentioned the range, the normal range for the hypertension, over 140/90. But how low is also too low? And are there any concerns with your blood pressure being low?
Very, 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 very good question. So how low is when you begin to see symptoms as you feel dizzy? So your blood pressure is essentially how your heart is pumping. And if your heart is not pumping enough blood, meaning like with every pump, if the blood flowing is low, that means that you are depriving very essential organs in your body of blood. The key one is your brain. So your brain will sense that your blood pressure, you are not giving it enough blood. So it feels like I have to lie flat. So you always tend to feel dizzy, and that is the body trying to tell you that, hey, your blood pressure is getting low. As you begin to feel lightheaded or feel dizzy or feel like you have to lie flat, the next point will be your heart rate begins to go faster, because your heart rate is trying to compensate for the fact that your blood is not pumping well. So it's trying to say, okay, let's pump more blood because we are not really getting enough volume. So that is another way to know that maybe your blood pressure is getting low. So those are the 2 important things that you have to observe, and make sure that if that is happening, regardless of where your blood pressure is, you may be having hypotension. So these are also seen in other conditions, but if everything else is fine, if you're not having fevers, if you're not feeling sick, and this is just what is happening because you're on blood pressure medications, then you have to begin to check. And we put a number for hypotension as like 90, below 90 of the higher number, systolic blood pressure below 90. Or when we average a MAP, we call it MAP goal like of a 60. And these are just numbers that I don't want to bore you with. But anytime your blood pressure you are feeling that dizzy or lightheaded, you have to think through that. Let me go and measure my blood pressure and see what the number is and note it down. If your blood pressure is 90, below 90, your systolic, the top one is below 90, then you are hypotensive by definition.
Right.
What we do is that before us to say that yes, for sure you are, if we give you fluids, if you go to the hospital and we give you fluids, or we try to do something to resuscitate you, bring your blood pressures up, and it's not responding, then you really meet the definition for hypotension.
Okay.
Low blood pressure.
Okay. Right.
And to just answer the question whether that is dangerous, as I said, just because your body needs the blood to function, your kidneys need blood, your heart, your lungs, your brain, and all the other organs are essential needs blood. You will have to make sure that your blood pressure doesn't go that low. Right. And if it's going low, you have to talk to your physician so that you do something about it.
Okay, right. Thank you so much. Dr. Obeng, hypertension, is there a cure for it?
So hypertension cannot be cured, but it's rather treated or managed.
Okay.
So what happens is that once you're diagnosed with hypertension, you have to make some lifestyle changes to, prevent the condition from worsening. You have to incorporate some form of exercises into your daily routine, and then we put you on medication. And then that medication sort of is a lifelong medication.
Okay.
But usually there are some misconceptions out there where people feel like once they take the medication and their BPs are controlled, then they can stop taking it. And so they stop, and then then they'll come back with a higher, or they'll be in crisis, hypertensive crisis or something like that. There are also those who feel like if they change their diets and exercise more, their condition will go away. And so they don't take the medicine, but they rather prefer to eat. But in all, even when you change your lifestyle habits, you avoid smoking and drinking and reduce salt intake and all that, and you also exercise, you may still need to take your medication, so that you can control it eventually. But it doesn't happen in such a way that you take it to some point and then you stop taking it at all.
Okay, so you mentioned that doesn't mean everyone who is diagnosed with hypertension will need medications.
Yes, please. So far as you are diagnosed with hypertension, you are going to need medication to manage it. Yeah.
And you are going to be taking it for life.
Yes, please.
There's no point along the diagnosis that maybe a doctor will say, okay, now I think your blood pressure is controlled, so you can go off your medications.
I think what happens is that usually, for instance, if they put you on a certain medication and for a while your blood pressure is controlled, they can reduce the quantity or taper it off gradually, but then they don't completely stop you from taking it.
Right. Okay. Dr. Ejetremi, I'll come to you now. We mentioned that we are going to be taking these medications for life. What are some of the side effects of these medications?
Very good. So and as she was saying, sometimes as your blood pressure is well controlled, there are sometimes we realize that we might have over prescribed, and your blood pressure might have been, so you are going into the hypotensive stage where you feel more dizzy or lightheaded, and those times your physician will begin to back off on some of the blood pressure medications that you are taking. There have been times that we have to completely take someone off the medication for a period and see how the person does. Okay. But even in those states, you have to continue to monitor your blood pressure, because once you are diagnosed of it, it's just more about managing the numbers and making sure that you are not getting the complications that are associated with it. So it's very, very important that once you are taking the medication, you check your blood pressure consistently and make sure that you are not going low, because that is the number one side effect of being on a high blood pressure medication. There are other side effects, and these are specific to different types of blood pressure medications. There are diuretics, like water pill blood pressure medications that makes you pee a lot more. And for those blood pressure medications, some of the side effects will mean you get more dehydrated. And get more dehydrated means you feel more dizzy or lightheadedness or feeling like you want to faint. So that part of it. And there are other blood pressure medications that can also slow down your heart rate so much. We call them the beta blockers, where when you take them, like people on metoprolol or carvedilol and all those medications, their heart rates can be very slow. And it can go to a extent that we have to actually back off on the medication because we don't want your heart rate to also be slow. Because as I said initially, your heart rate also helps your heart to pump blood. It's kind of a supporting role. So those are the popular and the most likely side effects. But there are other minor ones that happens with very specific blood pressure medications, including maybe raising your potassium levels for some of them, or some of them also making your potassium levels go low. And other things that we could talk about in terms of if we want more specifics.
Great. Okay. So you mentioned some of the side effects, but is it okay to take these antihypertensives, the medications, with other medications? Say maybe I'm diabetic or have some other conditions. Is it okay to take both the antihypertensive with those medications too?
Yes, yes. It's very okay to take them. There are times that we have maybe specific times that there are certain medications we want you to take with before you eat or something like that. But for the most part, for our blood pressure medications, there isn't a very strong recommendation that you don't have to take it with any other medications. The thing is that because hypertension, diabetes, kidney disease, they tend to go hand in hand. Most of the diabetic medications, most of the high blood pressure medications are also selected based on the thought that do you have diabetes or do you have other medical problems. And so when your physician knows that you have diabetes, there are blood pressure medications that are very specific and helpful for patients who have diabetes and maybe they are having issues with their proteins in their urine or something like that. So we use your comorbidities, that as we call it. So other diseases that you have, it helps us to also think through and say that, okay, should we give you this particular blood pressure medication over a different type of blood pressure medication? Okay. So yes, you can take it along with any other medications. There are times that we feel that maybe you are getting a lot of pills at the same time. And so when that happens, we will be able to spread it out and say, okay, then take this before you take that. But for the most part, it shouldn't be a problem if you are not taking a lot of medications that should cause a problem.
Okay. Dr. B, you mentioned earlier that some medications can cause your blood pressure to go up. What are some of these medications?
Okay, so you can have oral contraceptive pills.
Okay.
Yes, please. It can cause an increase in blood pressure. Some painkillers such as brufen can also cause that. Then recreational drugs like cocaine and amphetamines and the others. Yeah, alcohol can also cause increase in blood pressure.
Okay.
Yeah, and some other antidepressants can also cause increased blood pressure.
Okay, so the whole time you've been saying with good exercise and diets, you can control it. So what type of exercise are we looking at? What type of diet should we be eating?
Okay, so for the exercise, exercise in general is good, but for not all exercises are good for controlling BP. For controlling your blood pressure, we recommend aerobic exercises aerobic exercises such as cycling, jogging, walking, running. Weightlifting doesn't help. It rather increases blood pressure. Push-ups and those isometric exercises, they increase the blood pressure rather. Okay. So usually we recommend the aerobics. Yeah. And then for the food, there is something called DASH diets, which is diet approaches to stop hypertension. Okay. So it recommends that we incorporate more fruits and vegetables in our diets, eat more lean protein, and then cut down salt intake, and then fatty foods. So to control your hypertension, it's better you eat more fiber, more vegetables, more fruits. You cut down fatty meat and focus more on lean protein, the legumes, the nuts, plus chicken, fish, yeah, and reduce the meat that has a lot of fat in them.
Right.
And then also reduce your sodium intake or salt intake, because salt can rather increase your blood pressure. Yeah.
Okay, so I'll just dwell on the salt a little, but I'll come to Dr. Jeremy. Salt, we hear about salt a lot when we talk about hypertension. Is salt really that bad? And why is it bad when we are talking about hypertension? And then also, how much salt should we be taking?
Yes, so that's a packed question.
Yeah.
Salt, for us as blacks, and where we found ourselves in a very hot climate, the body kind of grew to make sure that you don't always get dehydrated and like almost all the time falling and unable to function. So we developed certain things in our body that makes us retain more salt. So naturally we tend to retain more salt than other races, especially just because of where we are coming from.
Okay.
And so the more you add salt to it, salt is one of the, I think Dr. Obins told us, that one of the risk factors when you have very high salt intake in your diet. It's going to cause you to have high blood pressure. And so just because of where we find ourselves and our race, we have to be careful about the added salt that we put in our diets. Salt is important because we need that to actually help us maintain our blood pressures and help us function. But at the same time, when it is too much, then you are getting to where you are going to have all the complications that come with it. And so the more salt you have in your body, then you are going to retain more water. And as you are retaining more water, you are going to cause yourself to either have more swelling in your legs, in other areas that you don't want to. Your blood pressures are going to be high, as we've said. And so we recommend that at least your total salt intake for a day shouldn't be more than 3 grams. The lower, the better. So if you are able to take it down to 2 grams, that's fine, and you are able to eat, okay, that's okay. For the purposes of high blood pressure and the DASH diet that Dr. Bin was talking about, a diet that is much more richer in potassium will be of benefit, because the potassium helps also to help to regulate your sodium in your blood. So bananas have high rich potassium, vegetables, fruits will have mostly very rich potassium. And so once you are doing that and you are reducing the salt intake in your diet, then you are helping to control your blood pressure. And even just using the diet can reduce your blood pressure, the top one, by 6 points. So yeah, and then if you add exercise can also reduce the top one by at least 6 points. So if you even combine the two, almost 10 to 12 points can. So if your blood pressures are in the 150 and you're able to do that consistently, just your diet, as we are talking about, and exercise, you are almost coming down to the normal levels where you need pills to control it. So that's why it's important that we stress on these things. And even if you require pills and you are checking your salt levels, how much salt you take, you are going to help to just prevent us from kind of increasing your pills, or even help us to take out some of the pills off, because we realize that you are managing the blood pressure well. So it's very, very important. And salt can be a dangerous thing, especially I back home. When you go to the chop bar with the soup and everything, they will put salt on the table as well. And people tend to add more salt to their food just to make the food tasty and all that. But the more we make our tongue just associate with very high salt, we are killing ourselves slowly.
Yeah. Just quickly, you mentioned 2 grams, 3 grams. How much is that? Is that a pinch of salt, or how much salt is that?
Maybe the nutritionist can help us with that question. But I think that if you are adding a teaspoon of salt to your, when you are preparing a stew or something, that should be enough for. But if you have to add more than that, then you are going to get into trouble.
Yeah.
Because when you all our diet, we have the stew, we have the rice, or if it's fufu, some people will add more salt to their cassava before and then more salt to the soup. And when you add everything, you are getting too much salt. And most of these blood pressures that we are having to deal with, and especially young people are now being diagnosed of strokes and other things that we didn't have to. It's all because we are not doing much about our diet, and our salt intake is it's way too high.
Yeah, right. Okay, so this is getting very interesting, but we'll just take a break here. We'll go for a quick commercial break, and when we get back, we'll continue with our conversation. And we would like to hear from you, so please send in your questions and your comments as well. Please stay tuned.
That over 23 million doses of the COVID-19 vaccine have been administered? Do you also know that 9.9 million of the eligible Ghanaian population are fully vaccinated, and 12.9 million eligible populations have taken just a single dose?
This means that over 6 million eligible Ghanaians are yet to take any vaccination. I want to encourage all who have taken the first dose to go for the second dose to be fully vaccinated. We are informed of the possibility of the emergence of new COVID-19 variants. I therefore encourage those who are fully vaccinated to go for a booster. Let's stay protected. Together, we can keep COVID-19 at bay.
This educational video is proudly brought to you by the Adventist Development and Relief Agency, Ghana, and Hope Channel, Ghana.
Welcome back to the consulting room. We are talking all about hypertension. I believe you're learning a lot. So I'll come to Dr. Obeng. If you're not able to control your blood pressure as much as you're supposed to, what problems could you possibly have?
Okay. So as you said earlier on, hypertension is a systemic disease, which means it can affect any organ in the body. So if your hypertension is not well controlled or your blood pressure is not well controlled, it can damage your heart, it can damage your kidneys, you can have problems even in the brain, and you can have stroke, you can have what we call aneurysm. So the blood vessels would, the walls will become weak and it will bulge out, and it can eventually rupture and cause a problem in your brain, which can lead to stroke, or it can even rupture in any other part of the body, your abdomen, which is also an emergency. So usually when you don't control your hypertension or your blood pressure, you can even have visual impairments or even blindness, to complete blindness. Yeah, there are people, it can also affect your legs, the blood vessels in your legs, such that when you exercise a bit, you feel pains because the blood vessels will constrict or they will become narrow. And so you don't get enough blood going through the legs. So upon little exercises, you get cramps, you get pain. Yeah, so it can virtually affect any organ in your body. It can destroy your kidneys, your heart. You can have heart diseases, heart attacks, so many other things. So it can affect basically all systems in your body.
Okay. So Dr. J. Chairman, Dr. Obeng has mentioned some of the complications that you could possibly have from hypertension, and this is affecting the individual. Are there any burdens as well that the family might have because of this, or maybe the community, even the nation as a whole? What are some of the burdens hypertension causes?
Yes. So as a nation, it deprives us of the workforce because it's one of the very leading causes of having like a stroke or a very debilitating disease. So if you don't control your blood pressure and you have to go through that, and then you end up having a heart attack or having a stroke or having blindness, as Dr. B was saying, then you are depriving the society of the human resource that we would have needed to be able to move the society forward. And there are a lot of lost work hours for people not controlling their blood pressure, being admitted to the hospital and being treated for it. So if you are able to prevent it, that is all the better, because then we have a strong workforce that we use as a society. For the family, it's going to also deprive your family of the kind of money you need to actually take care of them. You have to set some aside to be able to treat the complications that our lifestyle and our choices have led us into. So it affects the family, and even the bonding that you would have with them. If you find yourself in the hospital for days, for weeks, just because of some of these complications, then they will not be able to enjoy you as a parent, as a friend, as a brother, or any of that. So all those things make it important for us as people to take high blood pressure serious, because as you mentioned in your introduction, it's a modifiable disease that if we are able to change certain things, manage with medications if we need to, it's going to help us control it and prevent us from having the side effects. It was interesting when I was reading the statistics from Ghana that we have a prevalence of about 20 to 30%. So prevalence meaning when you take our society, when you take every 100 people or maybe every 10 people, 2 out of 10 adults will have high blood pressure. So 2 to 3 out of those will have high blood pressure. So let's just take 3 as a number. And out of these 3, more than 50% don't know they have high blood pressure. So they are walking around with very high blood pressures and they don't know. And for those who even know, if we take everybody together, those who have been able to control their blood pressure are less than 50%, half of them. So like if you put everything together, a lot of us walking around have high blood pressure. We don't know we have high blood pressure. Even those who know, most of them are not under control. So that puts us at a very difficult situation as a society, as a community, and as individuals, to take it very seriously, to begin to do all the things that we've talked about to help us control our blood pressures.
Yeah, right. So we're coming to the end of our show, unfortunately, but there's a question. So the person asked, how much sodium should one consume, which we've answered already. And the person also wants to know, if I take in more bananas, is it bad? You mentioned taking more potassium diet. So the person wants to know, if I take in a lot of bananas, is that bad?
Yeah, so a lot is a very relative, subjective. Maybe for me, 2 may be a lot, or for somebody, 3 is a lot. So one stick of banana, it contains like 10 milliequivalents of potassium. So so if you take 2 or 3 bananas a day, or 2 bananas a day, that should be fine. Okay. You have the potassium you need, and then you also, on top of that, you should have other nutrients in banana that you benefit. So yes, unless you are going to sit at one sitting and eat like 10 bananas, I don't. Your diet shouldn't be all bananas. You should have a balanced diet such that you have 1 or 2 bananas, then other things added, vegetables, greens, and all that.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much. So I'll take your final comments now before we wrap up. Dr. Obeng, I'll start with you.
Okay, so the little message I want to leave behind is that we should do our best to get routine checkups. I think that's one thing we don't do well as Ghanaians. So once in a while, pass by the hospital and get yourself checked up. You may not know what you find if you do, and the earlier you do, the better, so that you can save yourself, and also whatever is discovered can be managed accordingly.
Yes, thank you so much. Dr. J. Cherbe, final words.
Yes, thank you for choosing this important topic to educate Ghanaians on. So once you turn 18 years, across board, all the societies, European Society, American Society, Cardiology, all recommend that from 18 years, every year you should check your blood pressure. Those who have high blood pressures will have to check it much more frequently, as we already discussed. And you will have to, if you need to, use diet for everybody. Even if you don't have high blood pressure, diet, exercise will help you prevent you from having getting high blood pressure. Avoid sedentary lifestyle, just sitting on the table and throughout the day watching televisions and all that. Try and exercise. And if we are able to do that, then we reduce our risks of having high blood pressure and then all the complications that we've talked about. And if we are able to help ourselves through that, we are going to save ourselves money, help our families, save our society, and help us move forward.
Yeah, great. Thank you, doctor, so much for this. We've learned a lot. Thank you so much. And as we usually say, your health is your wealth. And hypertension is not a death sentence. So if you're on medications, please do well to take them and then monitor your blood pressure. Try and check your blood pressure often so you can know when you need to seek intervention. Let's all remember to go for our checkups as well, as Dr. Obing has told us, and let's stay healthy. Thank you so much for watching the Consulting Room. See you next time. Good night.
Good night.